You are about to journey against the current of contemporary thought and beyond the troubled waters of daily news to the very source of our extraordinary culture. You are going upstream with Cashel and Edge.
Hey, Loy Edge. Good to see you again, sir.
Cashel, I remember you. Good to see you.
Back from my travels. I am back now for the foreseeable future, so there will be no more interruptions in our schedule.
I tell you, man, you're really kind of, I was watching a podcast the other day.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with anything that we do.
Right.
And I just stumbled onto this. I hadn't seen it before. And just a few minutes into it, they make a reference to, the guy uses the word untenable, but he says, to quote Jack Cashel in his new book, it was an untenable situation. And I thought, wow, Jack's getting credit for creating a new word.
Yeah.
Untenable, which I think you just dug up and...
I think it's a real word.
It's a real word.
I think it pre-existed me, but...
It did.
You know, Lloyd, thank you for sending me that link, because you say, listen about 5 minutes in. And now these are two heavyweights. It's Charlie Kirk and Jack Posobiec in the alternate world on the right-wing media.
Yeah, they're a big deal. Yeah.
They're both big shots. And they're talking about all the ruckus in Congress, and I'm thinking, what does this have to do with me? I mean, why am I listening to this? And then you're right. And then one guy says, you know, the situation in Congress has become what Jack Cashel calls in his new book, Untenable. Untenable. I said, all right, okay. Make my day, you know, so I feel important.
Well, a lot of people are writing very good reviews about it and all that. So,
the reviews have been great. Now, the book Untenable is what I would call right now a success d'estime, the French phrase. Now I just need that to be translated into book sales. So we'll see where it goes.
Success de ka-ching is what you need now.
Success de ching, right? And this, by the way, if you pick this up and you're watching it sometime in the future, we're recording this in early October, which will color our topics a little bit today.
Right.
And the topic we're going to talk about today is these national archives in the EEOC have these special observance days and months that we're forced to celebrate now, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to look up and see where they came from and why we're forced to celebrate them. We'll get that in a minute. And then it dawned on me that in America this week, probably next week, probably for weeks to come, maybe months, there's only one ethnic group that has to hire security guards to protect its schools and its places of worship. And they don't get anything. They don't get a day. They don't get a month. And it's an ethnic group about which there's been more misinformation spread over the last 2 millennia, or before that even, than any other group.
Trans something, or is it what?
Science? No.
No.
It's Judaism. Okay.
Okay.
And we're talking 2 days after Israel came under attack from Hamas, and I'm not going to pretend that I know anything more about that than anyone else does. So we'll leave that to experts.
Well, it looks like it may have been financed by Hezbollah, who was the very recent recipient of some largesse.
From Iran.
From,
the Biden White House, $6 billion.
Exactly. And they might have picked up a few items of value somewhere around Afghanistan. Now, I don't know who left it laying around.
I can't imagine. And we thought all along that $6 billion was going to go to buy, new iPads for school children, but we were deceived, and Israel is paying the price. So our prayers are with the people of Israel.
Absolutely.
But moving on, I've been just transfixed by this idea of how some people get months and other people don't get months.
Man, if that isn't naked manipulation of the culture,
right,
from certain political interest groups, I don't know what is.
And so I looked it up, and because I said, who is it that designates Gay Pride Month?
Right.
Who makes June Gay Pride Month?
Yeah.
Well, right now, as far as I could tell, the National Archives, in league with the Equal Employment Opportunity Office, are the ones who designate.
The hell?
Right. But they are, I should say, they're the ones who categorize them and disseminate that information. But all of the days and months that we're now obliged to honor, recognize, come from almost always from executive orders, presidential orders, and in the rare case from an act of Congress.
I think we saw that one with the most recent holiday that the gentleman in the White House wrote in order to make Juneteenth a national holiday.
Although, you know what's bizarre is that is about the only one that had congressional approval.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, as though anyone had a choice, right? No, I vote no against giving African Americans another friggin' holiday.
It's a have you quit beating your wife vote, right?
Right.
No, African American. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
and you could hear the Black Caucus saying, "Hey, you gave us one already, but it sucks. It's in friggin' January. What good does that do us? We want one in June."
Well, they're still pissed because February is the shortest month.
Yeah, it's National Black History Month. Right.
How dare you? That
seems like a plot to me. I can't imagine anything.
They shorted them a few days.
Okay, what does Juneteenth celebrate?
That was a mistake. That was after 2 years, I think, after Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation.
Right.
Somebody in Galveston decided they'd share with everybody that they'd been freed. And it was on June 19th, 1868 or 67 or something. And they're like, huh? Well, oh, yeah, war's over, man. You put that cotton down. What are you doing?
Okay, now
Get out of here.
I know a lot more than you do about this because I have a PhD in American Studies.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, I checked the Wikipedia page.
Well, that's what all PhDs do.
Just before coming in. If you had asked me an hour ago the origins of Juneteenth, I'd have said something like you said. Something about something. But anyhow, it's the day that the last slave was freed in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And it came in June 19th, 1865, right? I mean, now we're just 2 months after the end of the Civil War. So it's not given the way news traveled circa 1865, it's not surprising it took a little while longer. However, what Juneteenth doesn't acknowledge is that that proclamation, just like the Emancipation Proclamation, actually, the Emancipation Proclamation only talked about slaves in the South. It did not talk about slaves in the states that were still in the Union. So, and when that was passed, I think it was January 1863, Lincoln basically said, from now on, all slaves in the rebelling states are free, which meant really nothing on the ground because, they were free, if they wanted to get killed by their erstwhile masters. But it didn't affect slave-owning states that were still in the Union, like Missouri, for instance. So it was kind of an empty proclamation, although it had a lot of historic ring to it. And then when the Union fell, when the South fell finally, everyone was freed, except where were slaves held until the 20th century within the boundaries between sea and shining sea?
I'll guess District of Columbia.
No, how about Indian Territory?
Oh, yeah, the Indians had slaves. Actually.
And they were not, they did not come under the jurisdiction of the Emancipation Proclamation.
Wow.
But yet, Indians get their month, right?
Yeah.
And so it is, you said it right just earlier, it is about who's got the most political pull in Washington.
Oh, yeah.
Let me run through these for you while I got them here. And notice how
I'm sure I celebrate a lot of these, so let me know, because I get real excited about festivals.
I don't like to read on the air, and plus I like to show off that I can read without reading glasses. Mainly because I put these things in
those letters are so big I can see them from here.
You can see the reflection off my head.
Yeah.
Anyhow, these special observances were designed to provide cultural awareness to everyone. Commemorative activities conducted for these observances should be educational.
Oh, yeah.
And employment related. Well, that's crazy.
That really tells you what it's really all about.
Employment related. You give
giving
people a day
a day off.
Right. So we started Dr. Martin Luther King Day. That happened under Nixon. That was his thing.
Okay.
Okay, March. Do you know what March is?
Oh, March. It's in like a lion, out like a lamb day.
Right. That's right. It's which I sort of.
Are we talking months now
yeah,
or days?
There's a month.
A month?
And in like a lion, out like a lamb, I would say is an appropriate designation for Women's History Month. That would be.
Oh, Women's History Month.
But then if you're an African American, to your point, you go from your 28-day month, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're looking at a month of like these affluent white women, elite white women. They get 31 days.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Of course.
That was Clinton.
Surprised they don't get 32.
Congress approved that one too, though. That was Bill Clinton. Okay, here's the one. May. Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, right?
Wow.
Think of the lumping that goes into here, right?
Boy, that sounds like that might be some kind of political posturing of some sort.
That was George W.
George W.
Yeah. Once that the Samoan
I remember
vote.
him.
Yeah.
He's the guy that I think George W. uniquely embarrasses every Republican right now because they're so pissed that they voted for him. And
right, and the least he could have done to atone was to have had he endorsed, had his family endorsed Donald Trump in 2020, the election would not have been close enough for them to steal. But they didn't. So, nor in 2016, because I think they're still mad.
He really disappeared, didn't he?
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
as soon as Trump designated Jeb low energy Jeb,
yeah.
that was all over. That was the
great.
Perfect nickname, I must say.
And with that freshly punched face that Jeb has,
Yeah, right.
just made it even better.
Right, he looked like the kid who's always getting beaten up in his schoolyard, even though he's a pretty big guy. Anyhow, but think about this. This is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, right?
Wow.
Now think of when they get together. Okay, let's say, are we going to celebrate today the Japanese rape of Nanking, right? Well, you're all on the same page. You all get the same month, right? Or the absolute horrors that Japan inflicted on the Philippines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we going to celebrate how China, under Mao, sent millions of crazy Chinese soldiers across the border into Korea to kill Koreans, right? How do we celebrate that? What's the day that? How does that get celebrated? It's another one of my questions. And Pacific Islanders, what do they have to do with this, right?
This is just damn well that there was an issue of funding somewhere that had to be emphasized. They needed to emphasize the victim status or to glorify them. We're repaying all the Pacific Islanders for
all the sins that we've committed against them.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever they were, like giving them. I was watching this. I may have mentioned something here, but it's worth re-saying. I was watching this something on YouTube, a little clip from a woman who's an Aborigine, Australian Aborigine,
mm-hmm.
and she was the head of the NAACP of Aborigines in Australia. But she's clearly a mixed race. And she's on a panel with 3 white people. And they say to her, they wanted to atone for what they had done to the Aborigines. And the question says, we feel guilty about all the things we did to the Aborigines. And she said, what? You gave us running water.
I remember that.
You gave us electricity, right?
Yeah.
What are we complaining about? And then they said, no, we're talking about the ancestral kind of horrors that must echo through your cultural memory.
Yeah.
She goes, hey, my father was brought over here in chains from England for owing like $3, and that's, if there's a horror visited on my people, that's it. Her father's people were, came from his prison colony. So, but she set him straight. But now they get lumped in, with Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, right? I mean, they're all thrown in this. There's 100 gazillion people. There's billions of people, But when it comes to employment, here's a question for you. What is the most overrepresented ethnic group in the National Football League based on population?
Probably Samoans.
Samoans, right? Their percentage of the population versus their percentage in the NFL, it dwarfs even that of African Americans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let alone how many Chinese people are playing in the NFL, right?
Yeah, not a whole lot.
Yeah. How many Japanese Americans, right? Shouldn't they be complaining? We got Asian History Month. Good opportunity to you're talking about employment opportunities. I'd say close to zero Chinese players in the NFL, close to zero Japanese, right?
Well, they're obviously being kept out
Right.
purposefully by greedy, I would imagine, white capitalist males.
Right. It's an exclusion act. It's the Asian Exclusion Act applied to the NFL with a set aside for Samoans.
Now, who was behind the original Asian Exclusion Act?
That's a good question you've asked.
Uh-huh.
And locally, it has some resonance.
Mm-hmm.
A certain family that became moguls in the newspaper industry, one of whose colonial outposts just happens to be here in Kansas City Star.
Wow.
It's the McClatchy brothers.
Mm.
They were so, at the time they were working out of Sacramento with the Sacramento Bee, but they were so vocal and such powerful lobbyists that they succeeded in getting the Japanese Exclusion Act passed.
Is that right?
I think it was like 1924. So, yeah, the Japanese were banned from coming to America. So that is Kansas City Star. I haven't seen them apologize for that, but
You ever go to the McClatchy website?
Not recently.
Man, it looks like it's right out of the Marxist latest international conference.
Yeah.
I mean, it is some commie-looking stuff.
Yeah, I haven't seen it lately.
I looked it up. It was a while ago, but
Yeah.
I thought, well, interesting. You know, how's the Star just going further and further into the abyss? How do they keep, when the model, when the only people left buying your product are pretty much old white people,
Right.
and
right.
all you do is come out and tell them how much they suck,
Yeah.
how long is that going to last? And I went in there, I thought, well, who's behind all this? And I saw that McClatchy thing, and I thought, well, I know who's behind all this.
Yeah. Right. Well, when you look at the Star, and it is more true of the Star than I think other newspapers, but all of them suffer from the same blight, and that is that it looks as though it were put together by the LGBT club at Penn Valley Community College.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that amateurish.
Yep.
It's that solipsistic, that just so focused on narrow, pointless issues. So 200 people getting murdered in Kansas City this year. Well, that doesn't fit our agenda, so let's just move on, So we'll find another month. Okay, and that brings us to the month of June. We all know what that is.
Yeah, that's the new flag. The new American flag.
Here it is called Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Pride Month, right? I looked a lot of this stuff up, so if I don't want to sound like I'm authority on it.
You did not. You've got all this up in your room.
But all the flags,
you can't wait.
All the closet flags.
You just can't wait to celebrate this stuff, can you?
Come out.
You go to the 99-cent store or the Dollar Tree and buy up all the flags and things.
Well, here it is, LGBT. Okay, we know lesbian, we know gay, we know transgender. I want to know, by what kind of logical or ethical calculation do we have a month celebrating the bees?
Yeah.
The people whose goal in life is to shag everything they see, right? So we have, what is the virtue we're celebrating here? What is the suffering that these people have endured, right?
The only one I know who's really suffered is Larry Sinclair.
Yeah. Yeah. He's been resurfaced.
I know.
Did you watch that?
Yeah, I watched it.
And Larry Sinclair, for those who are sort of new to the world of information, is the fellow who in 2008, rented out a room at the National Press Club and publicly accused, or reminisced, I should say, didn't accuse. He reminisced about the 2-day drug and sex tryst he had with a certain presidential candidate.
Who was a Chicago politician.
That's right.
Yeah.
Then much in the news. Yes, we can.
Yes,
well,
we can.
that meant something different to Larry Sinclair.
It did.
Yeah, than it did to other people. Yes, we can. No, and then for that, it was interesting what happened immediately afterwards. First of all, even before it happened, the leftward media pressured the National Press Club to cancel the event.
Right.
And to their credit, the people in the National Press Club refused to buckle. They would today, but then they didn't. And then it gets really diabolical when you look into
really dark.
Yeah.
And with the Donald visit, what was the choir director's name?
Donald Young.
Donald Young coming over to meet with Larry.
Yeah.
And trying to call him off, I guess.
Or something, and he gets murdered.
Something,
right?
And he gets murdered.
And
yeah.
that was in.
I mean, he's as dead as that poor guy with in the 2 inches of water.
Guy,
the
yeah,
paddleboard.
right,
Yeah.
right. It's a dangerous business.
It is.
We thought knowing the Clintons was dangerous. But then what also happens, and we may have talked about this, but it bears repeating, is that Sinclair had an outstanding warrant from the state of Delaware, right? So the media informed the Attorney General of Delaware of this outstanding warrant. And that was, you know who the Attorney General was? Beau Biden, right?
Oh, wow.
The then still living Beau Biden. And they had him arrested as soon as the press conference was over.
Wow.
Thanks to the media watchdogs.
The Praetorian Guard.
Absolutely, just absolutely. Now, I don't want to do this like not trying to embarrass you or anything, but do you know why June is the month designated for Gay Pride?
Probably that's when what was the place called? The Wall or
the Stonewall?
Stonewall.
Right.
Yeah. Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Then?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a rebellion,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember the Daily News headline was, and this is a different era, so bear with me. I'm just quoting the Daily News. The headline was, "Homo Nest Raided, Queen Bees Stinging Mad," right? Try that headline today. See how far you get. What
People used to buy papers out on the corner and out of machines. Keep that in mind. They had to get they had to get a little kooky with those headlines.
No, but I mean, you know, it's a good summary of using the vocabulary of the time.
Yeah.
1969. What had happened was the precipitating event was the death of Judy Garland. And Judy Garland was much revered in gay circles and bi circles too.
Friends of Dorothy.
And on the day of her funeral, the Queen Bees, in this case, it was a drag show, a drag bar in Greenwich Village, was raided just coincidentally because it was a mob joint. And the police weren't raiding it because it was a drag bar, because they were semi-respectable even then, you know. I remember my parents.
There were a lot of them.
Drag shows.
We
right?
had 2 of them here
Yeah,
in town.
yeah. And then they
Jewel Box and.
But the Queen Bees were stinging mad, and they rebelled, and that became the genesis, at least the launching point. I mean, what happened anyhow? They just needed a date, and now they have a month, right? And that, you know, who issued this one into law, of course.
I don't know who did.
Larry Sinclair is Beau.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Barack Obama. In 2009, like his first year in office, you know.
Well, he really pushed hard on that subject for some reason.
Yeah.
And what, you know, you can look at why so much emphasis suddenly out of the blue on transsexuality and how it just came from left field, just full on like a freight train.
Right.
And you'd almost think they were trying to prepare someone for a future presidential candidate that was
right.
transsexual or transvestite or something.
Then we could go into the Joan Rivers riff here. But
Yeah.
we've gone into that before. I however, will go on record as saying that Michelle Obama is not transsexual.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Cashel.
Right. I have. Well, we dated back in high school. No, I helped Joel Gilbert with his documentary and book, Michelle Obama 2024.
Uh-huh.
And I've seen pictures of her time she's a little girl. She has a legitimate pictorial history.
And where did she spend her formative years as she was growing up? Where did she live?
At the Stone. No, I'm sorry. I don't know. In Chicago.
Yeah. At the home of whom?
She spent a lot of time with Jesse Jackson.
Jesse Jackson.
Yeah.
She was a de facto family member.
That's right. Her best friend was, I don't know, Santi or something, whatever her name is, Jackson.
Yeah. She basically lived there.
Right. And at that time, Michelle was the hanger-on, and Jesse's daughter was the rock star.
Mm-hmm.
But times have changed. So I don't know if they're talking anymore, but I think her name is Santia or Sanitation Jackson, something.
I don't know.
That.
Sanctimonious Jackson. Sanctimonious.
That'd make a great first name. It's like Thelonious Monk. Or
Yeah.
Sanctimonious Jackson.
Sanctum Sanctorum Cashel.
It is Thelonious Monk, right?
It is Thelonious.
Is that Elon's brother, or is it? Oh no, that's Monk. It's not Musk. So, yeah. Anyhow,
it's the cousin of Felonious Punk, which I always liked that band name.
Okay.
Felonious Punk.
Now here's a weird one. By the way, Gay Pride Month and Juneteenth occur on June 19th. It's in the middle of Gay Pride Month.
Wow, what do you do with that?
That's a good question. I think.
Do we need a presidential decree to say?
We have an exemption.
You combine them, or you separate them, or you put it together and make a new flag. I think.
I would say so. I would say there's a lot of cooperation required.
I think with $1 billion, you take you just go into the Federal Reserve and just grab a wad like they do all the time when they're trying to do something that nobody would like. And you just go in there and give a couple of $1 billion to somebody to get a new logo for that Convergence Day. We'll call it Convergence Day.
Yeah, Convergence Day, right. We're Intersectionality Day.
And Intersectionality Day.
That's the phrase the left uses, intersectional. And all the intersectional subsets, and we know what they are, Islam, what doesn't fit, LGBT, Black, Hispanic, what else we got in there? Gay, I mentioned that. Female. These are all
NAMBLA.
Yeah, right. That's a growing movement within that.
Yeah, the Man-Boy Love Association.
Right. They're just. You think about this. 10 years ago, we would have thought that the idea of a trans right movement would have been so friggin' silly, but
yeah.
And NAMBLA is further along in that evolution towards acceptance. We'll have a NAMBLA month. There's still a couple months available.
Well, people used to call them pedophiles, but now we know what they're called, right?
What, Democrats?
No. Minor attracted.
Minor attracted people, yeah.
People.
Right. Hollywood luminaries, right? Another name. Okay, here's the funny one. Only one group gets a month that starts in the middle of a month and ends in the middle of a month.
Wow. I can't even imagine.
Karnak. Yeah, says. No, this is National Hispanic Historic Heritage Month. National Hispanic Heritage Month.
Wow. They get a half a month?
Well, then they get a whole month, but it begins on September 15th, and it ends on October 15th.
Huh.
So right now we are in it.
Wow. And
the reason it starts in the middle of the month, I just read on Wikipedia, like wherever, was that on September 15th, many years ago, a whole mess of Central American countries were liberated from Spain.
Oh.
A day later, Mexico was liberated from Spain, I believe, or some other country, maybe even France. So they have September 15th and September 16th. rather than just giving the month of September.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have Labor Day, you get complications. So they started September 15th because it started as a week, right? So then they had to just add days on.
Oh, it started as a week, but then
Right.
when they gave other people months,
Right.
who wants to be the one who says, no, I will not expand the Hispanic community to a month?
Right.
I mean, why don't we just make every day for everybody?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what they did when they created the United States of America.
E pluribus unum, one out of many.
Wow.
Right. Now
So
we're into-
all this is bullshit that's chipping away at the basic foundation of our nation.
That's the purpose.
Oh, it's to give, and then if there is a meaning to it, you want to detract from that meaning by pushing it onto a Monday so it becomes in everybody's mind just a day off.
Right.
So that's kind of a moral relativism thing where you take away any true significance of the date
Right.
and you lump it together like you President's Day or something like that.
Right. Right.
Okay.
And although I'm reluctant to date our show,
Mm-hmm.
we are on one such day right now.
We are. I don't even know what we're looking at.
That's right. You don't know what day it is because they don't want you to know what today is on the federal calendar.
Uh-oh. It was something legitimate.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's not the real day. It's the fake weekend day. But banks are closed today, I believe.
Oh, man. You mean it's Indigenous Peoples Day?
Well, that's part of it. And it's Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day.
Well, they really wanted to jerk the whole thing away from the Italians.
They're easing it, right?
And instead, they're just kind of pushing that other one in there and saying, we'll just take half of this tiramisu for ourselves.
That's right.
And we'll leave you this half.
Right, for now.
For now.
But we know that. It's like, like when the North Vietnamese agreed to draw the line across the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
The South is saying, oh, we get to keep our own country. The North is thinking, not for long. We're going to take the whole thing. Right?
Enjoy your Saigon while you got it.
Yeah, right.
Hey, yeah. Well, this thing about Columbus Day fading away, it was interesting because there was all that saber rattling at first, where they said, let's take it, let's delegitimize it completely, because of all the horrible things that Columbus did to all those noble savages.
Right.
And they just went on. I mean, I guess the Italians have essentially become just white people, because at first
they were demoted to the status of white people.
White people,
right,
yeah.
Right.
At first, they were being glorified for their specific contribution as a culture.
Correct.
And that was probably a political ploy of some sort. I don't know what really started
Well, it was. Italians were, but they also wanted to show how integrated they were into the American enterprise. So Columbus Day represented not only a celebration of Italians, but of America. So they weren't at odds.
St. Patrick's Day is kind of the same thing.
So when they celebrated Columbus Day, they were saying what a great person Columbus was.
Yeah.
What a great country this is. Thank you for letting us come here. So what they would do, for instance, in a city like the greatest mass lynching in American history took place in 1891 in New Orleans, right?
Okay.
This is not ingrained into American.
We don't have a day for this?
No, we do not.
Okay.
And a popular sheriff was gunned down in the streets of New Orleans. And as he lay dying, someone asked him, who did this? Who's responsible? He said, the Dagos, right?
Uh-huh.
Which is Italian-American slur. And so they quickly rounded up a dozen Italian-Americans in New Orleans and tried them. Actually, 9 of them. 9 of them were arrested, tried. And this is in an odd tribute to American justice. 6 of them were acquitted, and 3 were had a hung jury. They had to go for a retrial. But the citizens, you know what happens? You can't believe this would ever happen today. People who are not satisfied with the verdict in a trial would riot. Can you believe that?
Mm-mm.
I mean, you lived in Los Angeles. You know that would never happen in a city like Los Angeles.
Nope.
If you're unsatisfied with the verdict,
you just
accept it,
and
move
you
on.
say, well, I'm sure that they were as objective and fair as possible.
No, you burned down a city, cost $2 million in damage. Well, in New Orleans, they rioted too. They lynched the 9 suspects.
Wow.
And the 2 sort of innocent paisanos who just happened to be hanging around. 11 people, one mass lynching, right? The largest in America.
What do they refer to that as? Surely there's a name.
They don't refer to it. They just ignore it.
They hide it. They just ignore it.
Because they were honorary white. They've been promoted to white people, so no one cared.
Oh.
And so you know what the Italians did a year later?
No. But
they joined millions of other Americans in celebrating Columbus Day, right? They had festivities, parades, blah, blah, blah. In Newark, my hometown, the subject of my book, Untenable, True Story, White Flight from American Cities. In 1927, the Italian community got together and dedicated, they raised the money among themselves. And, with the blessing of the city, they erected this huge monument to Columbus in the Washington Park in downtown. And it stayed, it represented the synthesis of, immigrant ambitions and the American acceptance of them. And it stood there for, 93 years. If my math is right, until the summer of 2020, when Christopher Columbus statues were being attacked all across America. And the city mayor, who's a son of a black activist and black activist himself, without even asking the Italian community, just took the statue down at night.
Son of a black activist.
And he said he was putting it in storage. They later found it thrown by the side of a highway.
Really?
Yeah. And they replaced it, not at the same site, but in terms of memorials, a 700-pound statue of George Floyd sitting on a park bench in front of City Hall. Seems, I guess, better than having him, in the back of a police car or someplace.
Well, both of them were historically accurate.
Yeah, right. But Columbus had his head lopped off a lot of other places. So, now here's the irony, okay? Columbus Day, the real Columbus Day, is October 12th, the day that Christopher Columbus discovered America. And Christopher Columbus was in the employ of course,
Queen Ferdinand,
Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, right? He was the only paisan on that whole crew, right? He was the only Italian. He was the one who had the ambition and the dream and the vision. He was a little errant in his geography, but he nonetheless found his way to the United States, found his way to America. There's a gazillion city places named after him, and every city has a state has a Columbia, Columbus, or whatever, District of Columbia, District of Columbus, Columbia this, Columbia that. So he's ingrained into American history.
He's all over South America, Central America, Cologne.
So he is really a deeply faithful Christian. He wants to do the right thing.
Strike one.
Right, yeah, right. But he's in an employ of fairly rapacious people at the time who were all of a certain descent, right? They're all what? Hispanic. So their descendants, right, get a month, right? Whereas poor Christopher Columbus
gets a day.
Gets one day. They cut that day in half when they're cutting his head off, and they give it now to indigenous people, who the Hispanic people, if anyone was responsible for, parsing that population down, it was Hispanic people, right? So there is a lot of this whole celebration stuff that's very hard for me to understand. And if I were an Italian American, I would, and I have Italian American relatives, I would start mounting a vigorous defense on the behalf of Christopher Columbus, and I would demand an Italian American Heritage Month.
Okay, well, I'll be in that parade with you.
Your name ends in a vowel. You could.
It does, doesn't it?
You have the right to be there, so
Well, I have some buddies that get pretty vocal during that.
I can imagine.
During that time,
right.
some of the most vocal people that have ever been on Facebook are Italian friends of mine.
Right. Now, in November, now this is where we get really kind of curious. And the day, of course, Columbus shares is with what?
Indigenous people.
What does indigenous mean?
It means original to
a given place.
Which is, everybody knows, is conditional. So it's not even, I mean, how far back you going?
Well, here's what we know for a fact, is that there are no indigenous people in the in North America.
Right. They all came from somewhere.
And within a reasonable amount of, not that long ago, like 10 or 15,000 years ago. So I was reading about Indigenous Peoples Day, and they said, we know what we do. We take the opportunity on this day is to explain to people what indigenous means and who these indigenous people are.
Adam and Eve.
That's right. They're it. They are the only indigenous people. And I don't think they're from the United States. I mean, I may be wrong, but, well, I'm sorry. I take that back. In the Book of Mormon, they come from Jackson County, Missouri. So
Independence, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so if anything, this may be indigenous people, central, right? We could be it. But school kids are expected to be instructed in this and what indigenous means and why they're called indigenous people. And then what do we also know about these indigenous people? We should learn that in November because that's American Indian, Native American, what do they call it? Alaskan History Month. That's November.
Really?
Yeah, it does.
There's another one I missed.
And I lost that one. I was going to find that here. Oh, here we go. I hate to have to read on the air. I just want to get my terminology right.
So back in the old Chiefs and Chopper days, that was happening during that Indigenous or American Indian Month.
November is National American Indian. National American Indian. That's interesting. Hashtag / Alaskan Native Heritage Month.
Alaskan Native means anybody who lived there in 1949.
Before it became a state.
Yeah, when it officially became Alaska and not the Russian territory of whatever it was called.
Right.
North
Seward's Folly.
Yeah.
That's what we learned in our history books. So, yeah, Alaskans get months, Indians get months. But in fact, and going back to the word indigenous, all of these people came presumably from the same basic source, and that was, there may have been some people drifting in from elsewhere, but there seems to be largely a consensus that they're all really basically Asians. Mm-hmm. And they came over the land bridge. There's some general consensus that even a DNA test suggests a very high correlation between what we call Native Americans and Native Asians, right? So, but how did they get from, let's say, Alaska down to like choice real estate and say, New Jersey, right? They just had kick a lot of butt along the way. I mean, and they were doing that in recorded history. You look at the history of the Comanches and, they were just driving everyone out brutally. They were, if they were the indigenous people circa 1850, they deserved to be, was it Sherman or Sheridan said someone said something about them, the only good ones being not among us anymore. Mm-hmm. If that was your idea of a Native American, someone who would happily, kill your whole family and rape your wife, kill unborn babies, knock them against trees. It was routine. They drove the Apaches out of Texas, out of Oklahoma. They drove, all the other tribes out. They drove the Mexicans out of Texas. They were that proficient and that vicious, and yet we celebrate them, right? We have Comanche history during November month, or do we think that through before we.
Why don't they
go
just
hog.
cut to the chase and just call it not white
year?
year?
Right. The not white year will celebration. We'll kick off the not white celebration. Kicks off with Martin Luther King Day on January 15th.
Well, surely they didn't try to crowd one into December.
No, December seems to be free right now, before it becomes non-Christmas month, right?
Now these days, I think it's interesting. There used to be, George Washington had a day,
right.
Abraham Lincoln had a day. Now there are really only two people who have a day.
Martin Luther King and
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ, right. Christ,
That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. So
And
one of
them's more vulnerable than the other.
All the other history of this thing called the United States of America.
Yeah.
And there are only two standouts that deserve that day.
That's right.
And tell me, Jack, all my life I've heard, now, even when I was a little kid, it's like Father's Day and Mother's Day, they were always very puzzling to me. It's like, I don't get this. What does Mom have to do with the day? And now, everybody said, well, those are Hallmark holidays. Hallmark did those, to sell cards.
Right.
That made sense to me.
Right.
I've never done the research to figure out if that's true or not.
I think they had a hand in lobbying certain. Now they were down to like Grandmother's Day and Daughter's Day.
Well, now it's getting silly.
It is
because
getting
it's
silly.
on the internet now.
Right.
And they're coming up with all this stuff. All of a sudden, I'm seeing my elderly contemporaries posting pictures of their 40-year-old son. And it's like, it's my wonderful son because it's Son's Day.
That's right. And then the sons who aren't getting acknowledged on Facebook are now going to their parents and, what am I, chopped liver? How come I'm not here, right?
Right. And then and so that's so tedious to me. I just can't imagine. Now it's Daughter's Day, and then a few days later it's what is it? Siblings Day.
Right.
Siblings Day.
Now these are all being manufactured, and if you go to and the greeting card business is past its prime, obviously.
It's done, yeah.
So they have to create more days for you to send more cards on, but it is getting wearisome. That, however, to me is at least still voluntary, right?
Mm-hmm. I guess.
But
to me, it's like a peer pressure trap.
Yeah.
It's like
it is.
somebody
Totally.
drops a stink bomb and everybody
right.
has to smell it.
And it's Grandmother's Day, especially.
Right.
I mean, if the grandmother's sitting there looking at her Facebook page, waiting to see,
good ad.
Right.
Good ad. Seeing a little tear like the Indian.
Yeah, right. It was actually Sicilian, by the way.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I can live with that. I have a real hard time now with these days. And if I were president, I would start rescinding some certain executive orders and rescinding them quickly and get back to the days of people that we could all celebrate without, crossing our fingers or holding.
Could I write those pronouncements for you?
Oh, I'd love to have
I
you
mean,
do it.
I think that sounds like an easy job.
Yeah.
What's President Cashel going to do today? He's taking away the Indians' month.
Yeah, right.
All right.
He's giving it
This will
back
go
to
over great. He's giving it back to Columbus. He's giving Columbus Day back to the Italians.
One-term president, Jack Cashel, facing impeachment now in the House. It would take some nerve. I'm not sure I'd have it. But, hey, thank you all for listening today. By the way, we're coming from Real Media here. We're doing our stuff. By the way, I want to also congratulate Kansans for Life for signing on with Real Media to do their podcast. They've signed the contract. It's because it's such great service. And other groups out there, if you're interested, look up Real Media, REAL Media, and just ask for Brad, and go from there. Or talk to Loya or me.
It's a great place.
Yeah,
it's right over in it's in Overland Park.
Yep.
Great location.
Easily accessed off multiple highways. So, hey, we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in here to
Upstream with Cashel and Edge.